Oh, so gonna let me? Okay. Hi everyone. We are here tonight with Lyle Freed, CEO of the Shores Recovery Center in Port St. Lucie, Florida. He's also a psychologist, a pastor, and just a general plethora of knowledge of everything. So we are so glad to have you back with us tonight, Lyle.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Wonderful. Tonight's subject is going to be how to support your loved one while they are in treatment. And Lyle, did you want to start off tonight with just saying a couple things before we get to questions?
Well, it's really going to depend on a lot. I mean, it depends on where they are, what has transpired before, what tools and skill sets they already have. So some people are going to require more support than others, and others, quite frankly, would do better with less support because maybe they have been enabled. And we talked a little bit about it on one of our previous conversations about every time we do something for somebody that they could be doing for themselves, we basically say that we don't believe in them. We don't believe that they can do it on their own. At the same time, it's a real balance. I mean, they want to you want them to know that they're supported and that you're there for them in all the appropriate ways. But avoiding that codependency, which is can come in many forms. It can come in financial. It can come in emotional. A lot of things we can do. And part of it is also determining the environment they're in. So what's appropriate supports in one environment may be inappropriate in another environment or another level of care. So they may be at a place that has an executive chef and there's meals available 24/7. If they're asking you for food money, they obviously don't really need it, and it's probably a bad idea. If they're in a place where they're responsible for their own meals or some of their own meals, then maybe some support, financial support, is good. Understanding and then doing it in the right way, I think, is also important, because usually when people talk about support, they talk about physical things. So we'll talk about those first. So, for instance, if they're in there and they need cigarette money, my recommendation is to check with the facility first and see, do they? It wouldn't shock anybody to find out that their loved one who is dealing with addictive issues might not always be 100% honest. So with that in mind, we want to make sure that what we're doing is good. And so checking with the provider is often a good place to start. I was talking with a mom recently, and she said that her son wanted to buy groceries for him. And his counselor said, no, if that will be setting us backwards. But she wanted to let him know that she was there to support him. So what I recommended is, because he was already in outpatient status, so she was coming down to visit him and wanted to go take him out grocery shopping and fill up carts for him. She was just dying to do more. And his therapist said that would be a bad idea. So I recommended she call the therapist to see what can she do. Is taking him out to a movie and buying some popcorn. Maybe that's in line. Maybe just taking him out to dinner at a restaurant to spend some real time with him, but still leave him responsible for his day to day. So it really getting the facility and the primary caregivers involved to know where they are in their process and what is appropriate is sometimes helpful. The other thing is, some people have a little further to move into independence. In other words, if they've really never ever done anything for themselves, or they living off a trust fund, do they get access to that money? Not. Does the family encourage them to live at the same level of means as other people who maybe were less well-to-do? Are you asking them to move down to that level while they're in recovery to humble them? Is that a good idea? And those are all case-by-case scenarios. There's really no one answer for. So involving the primary caregiver is always the first step to find out where they are with that. I'll give you an example. I had a guy who came into our facility, and he was an actor and producer from Hollywood. And his initial response to me was, nobody can know what I do or who I am. I said, okay. The first thing he did was tell everybody who he was and what he did. And he wanted everybody to, pat him on the back for being a famous person. But at the same time, he expected this royal treatment that I felt was contrary to his well-being. So what we did was we roomed him with a scholarship person who was indigent and had been homeless for 2 years prior to coming in, to remind him that addiction is an equalizer. Now, that's not something I would normally do, but in this case, after speaking with the clinical team, we felt it would be the best thing for both of them. And we did, and it worked well, at least for a few weeks, until he decided that he was cured and headed back to Hollywood. But again, it took a lot of talk between our clinical team to determine if that was a good approach or not. It was not something we do lightly.
That's wonderful. Are you still here with us? Okay. Hello?
I am.
Okay.
I was just giving you a chance to come in there. So,
Okay, well, I can start off with a question. This has been like ever since we said what we were going to do tonight. It's been itching on me. I've been wanting to ask you. So, my son is there with you right now at the Shores.
Mhm.
And this is his fifth treatment center. He plays the South Florida Shuffle. Although now his insurance is about to run out, so he can't really shuffle much more. So, right. So in the past, how I've always treated this, I've got it down pat not to enable when he's using an active addiction. Got that down pat. But when he is in recovery,
Mhm.
that's where I start, in the past, I paid off all his tickets because he was in recovery. I got him
Mhm.
groceries because he was in recovery because I felt so
Mhm.
bad that he had to pay $200 a week for sober living. And then he had to pay for this and for that and for this. And he wasn't making much. And I didn't want to stress him out and blah, all the
Mhm.
excuses. And, so I would help him to the point where I had to go into bankruptcy because I couldn't financially help him anymore. And that's where I am now. And so now I'm at the point where I don't want to help him at all financially, where I really
Yeah.
can't really, even so
Right.
much. I mean, to do it, it means a lot that I have to go out and work 4 extra shifts. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
I'm there to support him when he calls me and when we talk and all those things. But I don't want to hinder him by not helping at all. And I don't want
Mhm.
to, because my son is the classic. We weren't rich, we were middle class, but he had everything and that he wanted. And so like he won't even ride a bus. He's that kind of guy, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But now he doesn't have a car and blah 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 blah. And
Mhm.
so I guess my question is, how do I approach him with this? Am I doing the right thing by not doing something for him that he can do for himself and just letting him fall and humble himself?
I think, again, it is a case by case, and speaking with his primary therapist would be the first order. But let's talk in general terms, because that way I'm not talking about an individual. So the example of paying off tickets. So what lesson do you suppose he learns without the consequences? You know, so he has these tickets that went unpaid. He procrastinated on dealing with them. He got them in the first place. So, what'd you do to get them? And then what do you do about that? So if the answer is I just wait and mom pays it off, then the odds of him getting another ticket are pretty strong, right? There's no real lesson learned there, except that someone else is going to take care of this for me. When the responsibility lies on you and you have that difficulty, I'd remind people that not only in recovery, not only what we call the blessings of recovery, but there's also the reminders of our past. And sometimes those are part of the blessings. So, in all honesty, if I had never been in addiction myself, I would probably be in a better financial state right now than I am, right? Fair to say. That's a daily reminder for me to continue to do the right thing and focus in a different direction than I used to. I have physical injuries that I've occurred in my life that remind me that, jumping off bridges is probably not a good idea. Certain things that have been lessons. So if we remove all consequences, we remove all growing and learning opportunities. Now, on the other end of that, there are times where you can ask. Let's say you need, and in your situation you described, you can say, "Listen, I can't do it. You're going to have to figure it out because I'm tapped. I'm done. It's just not physically possible. I'm here for you, emotional support. I got you. But the other stuff, ask the guys around you. How are they doing it? How do they get to the meetings and to work without a car? What does that look like? Have you talked to the clinical team to see what transportation is available in that area? Are there buses that will pick you up? Are there other services that work? Are there people from the meetings you can ride with? And this is where we start using our skill sets and figuring out how to get by and how to survive in this world. If you continue to provide a solution for him, he'll never learn that. So I think that you can relax and feel comfortable that, first of all, you can't do what you can't do. And second of all, he will be able to do more than he is even imagining. I agree with you that a certain amount of financial strain early in recovery can be a barrier to recovery for some. And that's a difficult one to balance and to know where that tipping point is. So certainly, some things may need to wait, and it may need to be that, okay, you've got 5 tickets. Let's target one at a time. One of the things I teach my clients is something called a structural tension chart. Maybe I'll see if I can pull one up for you and put that on the screen. And this helps them to learn these things, to learn to take care of things and to focus on what's most important, and begin to address them one at a time. So I don't know if I have one on this computer is the problem. So I don't think I do. I'll see if I can find one for you before we're done here.
That's okay. I had one more part to that question.
Sure.
After a bunch of soul searching and learning, and my Nar-Non's really helping me personally deal with, not enabling both sides. But what it comes down to me is I feel like I have to reward him for doing good. How often do you hear that? I feel like it's kind of
Yeah, I
rewarding
do.
him.
I hear it a lot, and yes and no, but the reward doesn't have to be financial either. There's a lot of ways to reward people. And part of it is that, showing a certain level of trust, being able to say, okay, I think you can handle this responsibility. And part of that is just, the not holding back on the things that you might have held back on before. So, and I'm going to bring this up to share on the screen while we talk about this. So, and here's the funny thing is, I will tell you that some people, I'm trying to figure out how to turn my screen while we're talking. Some people find it very difficult to accept rewards. They're like, you're congratulating me for not screwing up. Basically, I've heard a lot of people say, you're congratulating me for what? That doesn't make sense to me. So that happens to where it can backfire. A lot of clients that I see aren't comfortable receiving congratulations for making 6 months clean or whatever it may be. They go, that's what normal people do. They don't get high and they don't miss work and they don't end up in jail. That's normal stuff. Don't congratulate me for that. But at the same time, it needs to be recognized that they're overcomers. They are to be congratulated. So the support and the rewards that you're talking about don't need to be financial.
Got it. Thank you.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, I see it. Does everyone else see it?
Okay. Let me explain what this is and how I have the clients use it. So at the top, in this area where my cursor is going over, is the goal or vision, what we want to accomplish. And I usually ask them to pick a time period that gives them time to flexibility, 2 years, 5 years, something like that. Sometimes they want to do 6 months because that's as far as they can see right now. But what I'm talking about up here, typically for people in our environment, is where do you want to be? What do you want your life to look like? And I don't mean just the white picket fence and the 2.5 kids and a Harley in the garage. I'm talking about, where do you want to see yourself career-wise, family-wise, relationship-wise, and character-wise? So I asked them to pick people in their life that they admire and find out what they admire about them. And when they discover what those character traits are that they admire, that to me means that those are things they desire to have themselves. So they fill out all of that up here. Then at the bottom, there is a current reality, and it's usually juxtaposed. And let me reduce this screen so that you can see all of it at once. So down here is today's reality. Up here is where I want to get to. In this box in column A, we start with the very first thing I need to do to get from the bottom to the top, and then a target date to complete it. And then if it's a second level chart. So for instance, if that first thing I need to do is maybe I want to be a medical doctor, and first thing I need to do is get my GED so I can go to school. Well, that may have a whole separate separate chart that says, to get my GED, I need to go sign up for some tutorial classes, find out where to take it, get the money, pay for the test, and go forward. So each one of these is a step toward where you want your life to be. The reason I do that is I want them to be focused on moving forward. I want them to be geared towards. So some of those promises, some of those things you help them with, when they have that spelled out like that, they will then be able to know what they really need help with and what they can do on their own. Plus, if I go back to it, if they have on there that they need, first thing they need to do is get a car. Okay, well, what does that involve? If you don't have transportation, what do you have to do? You need to save $500, $1,000. What do you need? And how are you going to do that? And they begin to find solutions. And that's where I tell them, we want to be solution focused. So usually by the time they get to the IOP level, we're talking about how to move forward in life. We know what the problems are. What are the solutions? If you sit there and do nothing but talk about your symptoms and your difficulties and the barriers and to moving forward, but don't come up with any solutions, then really all we're doing is complaining. We're not making change. So helping them find that. And the other thing, again, like you said, you wanted to reward him, but the real reward is saying, I believe in you. I believe that you can do this. That's a great way to reward people, to show the confidence in them that they can live life without substances. They can make good decisions. They can take care of themselves. Now, sometimes they can't, and you need to understand where that is. Some people have more tools to work with than others. Some may have cognitive deficits or other disorders and mental health issues and things that are true barriers that they need assistance with. And it may be a matter of, making sure they have access to their medication, that their copay is covered, and whatever it may be. Some of those things, they do, are crucial. And again, though, check and see what solutions there might be. Is there a community resource they can reach into? And again, for everybody, it's different. So for some people, it may be more appropriate to just take care of it for them because they're not there yet. For others, it may just be that, quite frankly, the skills they need moving forward is to manage their money because they have plenty of it. And so helping them set up a budget may be all there is to it. So it really is all across the board and very case dependent.
That's all really, really wonderful advice. Thank you, Lyle. I want to open the floor to others. Does anybody else have a question for Lyle tonight? Hopefully. You can just go ahead and speak up if you do. Anybody? Everyone's so quiet.
Well, I can talk until someone does come up. But,
I think Cindy had something. Go ahead, Cindy.
Okay.
When you say though to reach those goals, how do I say this? I've always have taken care of my son. I make the phone calls. I can't even go on. I've been doing this to him since he was a child, and I never let him grow up. So that's my question now. I basically really didn't give him the tools that he needed to do things as an adult. So he's in rehab right now, and I guess what I need to say is, how do I step away gently without making him feel helpless? Because he will. I know he will. But I know he's an adult, and I know he can handle it. But that's my question. Do I abruptly step away? Do I talk about it?
You definitely talk about it, and also talk to, consider getting involved with his treatment team. I always encourage people to get involved in the aftercare planning, because that way the team can know what resources this person has or doesn't have, what's the temperament of the family situation. In other words, is the family, ready to receive them back home or not, if that's an appropriate, response. But certainly speak to them and begin to ask them, say, listen, here's what I feel I've done. I've disabled him by over-enabling him, and therefore he never developed the skills. And so usually, quite frankly, switching from one extreme to the other is not helpful. So finding that middle ground, And again, with the treatment team, you're not in this alone. Hopefully,
Yeah.
wherever he is more than happy to work with you and help you set some healthy boundaries, and also give some realistic expectations of what that looks like. Include the goals and accomplishments. Figure out what is the next thing. What is their aftercare plan for him, and have they spoken to you about it? And if so, how involved should you be? What is their expectation? And some do it better than others, no doubt. But if you give them that history, a little history of the codependence that you've had and the enablement that you've seen, and the deficits that you believe it's left that may need to be addressed, they might be able to work with that so that he comes up to speed quicker. The other thing is that they can guide you into how to move from one to the other without, pushing them off a cliff.
Right. That's my main question. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know enough about him to tell you how that looks, but I promise you, his primary therapist should have that answer for you. How long has he been in treatment?
Oh well, this is the fourth. Well, he went today, and hopefully he stays. And he was just in treatment like 2 months ago. Came home and didn't do what he was supposed to do, and he went back in today. And he unfortunately, as we've all heard in the addiction field, is he's going to do it his way. He was mad that he even went back. He all I need to do is get a job.
Yeah.
And I'll be okay. That kind of attitude.
Yeah.
So I don't even know where the attitude is right now. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just know I'm not taking any calls while he's in treatment. I'm not.
Gotcha.
I'm not.
Well, if there is a release of information and they're allowed to talk to you, I would ask to be engaged in that process early on so that you can be a healthier help. Now, if there's not a release of information, they're still allowed to hear from you, and I would still recommend that you, even if it's in an email or a phone call, you say, you may not be able to talk to me, but let me tell you what I do know so that you can be more prepared and so that you can be a better help to help.
Exactly.
And most people welcome that information.
Yeah. Well, one thing is he thinks he's going to come back here and live at my house, and he's not. He's not.
Okay, then you need to let them know that so they can begin their aftercare plan to involve something other than that. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Okay, I'll do that. I'm going to give it a day or so. Hopefully.
Yeah.
I pray the attitude changes. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
You just hope it happens this time. So.
Yeah, and most places would be more than happy to work with you on that.
Okay, I will. I'll call in, like you said. If I'm not a release, then if he didn't do a HIPAA, then I'll just say I can tell you this is what's going on.
Right.
This is where he is, because he won't tell him that. I know he won't. Okay. Well, thank you for that advice.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Lyle. Who has our next question? It's getting good now, huh?
Hi.
Hi.
It's Sue.
Hi, Sue.
Hey, Sue.
How you doing?
Doing well.
This is my second meeting today.
Wonderful. The floor is yours, Sue. Go ahead and ask Lyle what you would like.
Oh, I just, I'm getting stronger. My son I have two sons, and my first son, thankfully, is in recovery for the moment. But my second son OD'd on my floor one day when I came home from work. Thankfully, I'm in healthcare. I knew CPR, called 911, and started giving him CPR. But so I sent him to Florida for, I said, I don't know. I guess I was angry. I couldn't even, I have always enabled them. My children, I gave up my life for them and probably enabled them too much. Their father was very restrictive to them. But so he left rehab and said, I have nowhere to come back to, right? in Florida and I live in Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, you don't. It took him a week on the streets of Florida. He went back to rehab. And he's in there now. He called me on Mother's Day. He's very, very sad, which is better than he was before he thought he was on vacation. But where is the point where I let him come home? I've also sectioned him. This has been 4 years now. I also sectioned him to jail, which the first time I would not prefer jail, but I knew if he wasn't going to save himself, I had to save him. That first time they put him in a great, great program here in Massachusetts. The second time he spent the whole time in jail. And it was the same thing over and over and over and over. That he's gotten, I've probably sent him to 5 rehabs and jail twice. And
yeah.
Where is the point where it is okay to let him home?
Yeah, well, let me ask you something. First, how long do you think he's going to be in the place that he is now? What's the
well, I told him I really, honestly, he said, if I come home, I don't have a place to go to. He lives with me. And I said, no, you don't. I said, wait a minute. Actually, you do. I will send you to a sober house in New Hampshire. I thought at least a year because he's been sober and done sober houses for 4 months at a time and still gone back to the same. So I'm trying to get myself better to not enable him, but I don't know where's the point where I could.
Yeah. So the program he's in now, do you know about how long that's going to last through the various levels of care?
Well, he just went to a detox because he went back to the place and then they ended up sending him to the hospital because he was unresponsive.
Okay. And so once he gets out of detox, what do you expect to happen? The reason I'm asking, because you don't have to actually give me the answer, but the reason I'm asking is because if you have a period of time while he's in their care to begin developing an aftercare plan, and you can let them know that coming back to you is not the answer, and ask them for guidance as they do the background on him and get their professional opinion, so that 2 things happen there. One is it's you deferring to the professionals, and don't get me wrong, you know your son in ways that they never will, but they also do it with an impartiality and without some of the background and history that may interfere with your decision making. So this gives you an opportunity to begin that plan and to tell them the history. He does 4 months and then it's back. So typically what I hear families say is, you've got to show me something's different. And if you've got a pattern of doing 4 months and relapsing, then how do I know that's not going to happen this time? And I need to see more. I need to see you get past that. I need to know what's going to get you past the 4-month point, because quite frankly, if we're going to treatment for the 4th, 5th, 6th time, and we're doing it the same way we did the first 4, 5, 6 times, don't get me wrong, you can sort of.
It's okay, I can take it.
No, I'm just saying you can.
I
He
keep
may be
myself in the
snowballing.
behind every day. Like, why did I take him back? Because
right. So he may be learning more each time and learning more about himself and gaining more skills. So I'm not saying that just because it's the same type of treatment and nothing in the aftercare plan is different, that you can expect the same results. However, what reason would you have to expect different results if everything else leading up to that point was the same? So, do we look at a different plan? That the only way you can come back is if you're on a naltrexone implant and you're involved in, so that A, you need this much time to show me you're serious, and B, even then, I need to know something that's going to protect you so that we don't go through this roller coaster merry-go-round effect all over again, because it's not good for him, it's not good for you, and you can say, listen, I want to know what's different. So we need to come up with a different plan, because that's the whole the old adage in Al-Anon and Alcoholics Anonymous is, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results is the definition of insanity. So if we're not going to do something different, then why are we doing it at all? So, what does that look like? Does that mean being put on a Vivitrol shot? Does it mean be putting on the implant? Does it
I
mean?
actually did. He did come from a rehab, and I said I used to work at the hospital, and there was a psychiatrist upstairs that gave him the Vivitrol shot. He actually had it a couple times, and then the third time he refused it.
Mhm.
He's been in Suboxone clinics. He's been to the methadone clinic. I have tried everything, and I don't even
Well, here's a few things I'll tell you. So he did 2 rounds of Vivitrol and then didn't go for the third. Is that what I heard?
Right, and I said, then you need to probably move out of my house because I know where this is gonna go,
Right.
or get on some sort of other program.
Right. So here's a little background of why that is typical 3 months of the treatment, and then they stop. It really is a neurotransmitter issue. So what happens is their dopamine begins to wane over time when they're on those medications. So whether it be Suboxone or naltrexone, their neurotransmitter processes adapt and not always in a good way. And so typically after a few months, those processes have been depleted and there's difficulty. So they begin to get depressed and cravings despite being on the medications that are supposed to prevent that because there's a dopamine deficiency or other neurotransmitter imbalances. And there's things you can do in the system to help him stay on it. And certainly we can talk about that separately if you like, and I can guide you in that direction. That's all another topic for another night, but that's not unusual. So the trick is, okay, why did you get off it last time? And what are we going to do about it this time? Because the only way you're coming back is if I know that you are on that and staying on it for the duration that is recommended by the professionals that are helping you. And then work with the doctor to do what the doctor recommends. Typically, other sources recommend at least a year
and that's what I said, a year.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm his mother, and he can easily manipulate me.
Yeah. Well, and so you put your foot down in advance, let the treatment center know that this is the deal, and don't even make an aftercare plan that includes me unless this much duration of time has expired and or these circumstances are met, And if you spell that out clearly for them in advance, the odds of them planning around that are much greater, and they will help guide him in that direction. He's still a grown man, and he's still going to make his decisions, but at least you'll have some people, pulling for you there. You won't be in it alone.
Right. Thank you.
Also, Sue, I don't know if you were here earlier, but there's also a implant. Now
I just heard him say that.
It's a 6 month implant.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. My son is a different sort. He was like a genius. He's so smart. All honors in school, an athlete, but he just knows how to manipulate me because I've always, their dad was really harsh. And so I was so soft. So it's tough.
Now's your opportunity to outline. Now's your opportunity to outline something you can stick by and get the treatment team to be on board with you. So again, they can and ask them, hold me accountable because I don't want to go through this again. Let's make a plan that looks different than that, and they can work with you. The implants they do work 3 to 6 months at a time. You can they dissolve inside. There's no difficulty to it. They have to go through certain testing, to make sure that it's appropriate for them and medically safe for them. But if they can accept Vivitrol, they can accept the implant as well. And then you get 3 months of compliance automatic. It's sort of in there. So.
And how does the implant work? Like the doctor has to put it in.
It's a little 1-inch incision. They put it in over by the hip, and it's a little pellets that dissolve over time and give that continuous naltrexone coverage, just like the Vivitrol shot, but different delivery format, and therefore you don't have to come back every month. And it's you get 3 to 6 months of coverage at a time. They have to
Wow.
continue in cognitive therapies. That's all MATs require, if you're going to do it right, require ongoing cognitive behavioral therapies to go with it.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, frankly, the data of doing the medication without that, the relapse rates are no different than not doing anything at all. Long-term relapse rates are no different.
Yeah.
So you got to have the cognitive therapies. They have to learn new behaviors.
Mhm. Me too.
Yeah. Yep, we all do.
Me too.
Lyle, does the
Thank you.
Vivitrol, does it, I'm so sorry. Thank you so much, Sue.
No worries. Thank
Loved
you.
your question. That was a great question. That was awesome. The Vivitrol shot, how does that work in correlation to the amino acid therapy? Is that going to hurt the therapy? Because I know some medications don't do well with the immunotherapy, right?
Well, yeah, typically most do. There's very seldom that people have any cross indicacies with that because it is so natural. So what happens with the immunotherapies is, just as I said, when you have an naltrexone in, that's a new opioid blocker. So at that receptor site, you're blocking activity. So that's why the opiates don't work. So that is also an area where dopamine has some interaction. So initially, the dopamine, you actually get a push of it rather than a reduction because it rewires, so to speak. It circumvents, it goes over to the delta receptor. You have the mu opioid, the delta, and the kappa receptor involved in that. The dopamine tends to go see that the mu opioid receptor is blocked and then run over to the delta receptor. For about the first 3 months, you actually have an increase in dopamine reception. However, that does wane after the first 3 months, and that's why people often do feel that depression after they've been on it for a period of time, or at least lessened joy. So you can actually add the aminos, boost your aminos at that point to increase your dopamine production and help with the receptors on other receptor sites. So adding it, actually the aminos complement it very well. When I put somebody, one of our patients gets on naltrexone of any kind, oral, shot, or implant, I recommend they add certain aminos, and we walk them through that process so that their dopamine levels remain stable throughout the treatment process.
Those are the GLAs or amino acids?
Amino acids. There's different formulas depending on the person. Yep. We what we're doing now is we test them genetically, so we know exactly. Like for instance, I ran the genetic test on myself as one of the trials. I have a what they call a risk allele or a gene variant on the DRD1, DRD2, DRD3, and DRD4, the 4 main dopamine receptors. One of those risk factors, one of my genetic issues, is that I metabolize dopamine 4 times the normal rate. So the same amount of dopamine flow in my brain has 1/4 the effect. So I need more dopamine than the average bear just to keep it at a normal level.
Right.
So I tend to run dopamine deficient. So what I do is I take a amino blend with the cofactors. You got to take amino acid work best in conjunction with other vitamins, minerals, and other cofactors. That includes everything from chromium, salt, CoQ10. So what we do is we have blends for them that target specific neurotransmitter activity. For me, it's dopamine specific. For some people, it's dopamine and endorphins, or dopamine and serotonin. For some people, it's the GABA. For some people, it's all of it. Yeah.
It's all holistic. I brought my kids up holistic.
Yeah, it is.
So I always.
The way it works is we're a little off topic, but I'll do it anyway. So the issue is your body. No, I think it's great stuff. I just don't want anybody to miss out on what they really called in for. So your body takes in proteins, it breaks them down, acids then become available, and those amino acids are what we call precursors that your body uses to make the neurotransmitters that hit in your brain. So your endorphins, your enkephalins, your GABA, your serotonin, your melatonin, your dopamine, all that stuff requires those precursors. So for instance, serotonin is made from 5-HTP, that's 5-hydroxy. That's why one of the main serotonin receptor genes is known as the 5-HTT gene, because it works with the 5-HT2A receptor, which is named after 5-hydroxy because tryptophan, because that's what activates serotonin in your brain. So all that said, if you add the right precursors and cofactors, your body will produce a balanced amount of the neurotransmitter to keep you happy, healthy, and whole. So we tend to either have a genetic issue that keeps us from having that proper balance, or we've done things to disrupt our neurochemistry and sort of messed with the system, and we need to rebalance it through these processes. And if you guys contact me separately, I'll be glad to talk about the specifics for each person and what they can do to address their specific needs and how you can find out what those needs are, so that you don't waste a lot of time and money with things that aren't necessary or don't work.
Right. That's wonderful.
I don't own stock in any of it, just so you know. I just seen it work, and the science is solid and phenomenal. The new genetic testing, I believe, is going to revolutionize addiction recovery and prevention.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
It is awesome. Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Lyle. Our next question, and who has our next question for Lyle? And it goes quiet. Anybody? Anyone has a question about how to properly support your loved one in addiction, or on the amino acid therapy, either or? Well, Lyle, is there anything you want to talk about before we close it out?
No, I think that's good. I think we covered a fair amount, and I think.
Paige has a question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Paige.
Okay.
Thank you, Beth. I apologize. I had to jump on a little late from work today. But I'm not even sure if this is the right type of question to ask. If not, maybe you can let me know. My son is in recovery and has been for about 1.5 years now. And
Congratulations.
thank you. I'm very proud of him. His DOC was benzos and heroin.
Mm-hmm.
And I have trouble supporting him, not just emotionally, but actually getting him to open up and talk about his recovery, any struggles that he's having, things like that. And I don't want to be the mom that's too pushy to try to get information, because some stuff, honestly, I probably don't want to know. But I didn't know if you maybe had some suggestions or recommendations on ways that I could get him to open up and actually talk to me and realize I'm not the enemy, that I'm proud of his recovery and I want to see him continue in his recovery.
Okay, so let me see if I understand. He's got 1.5 years. Things are basically well between you, but he seems closed off, and you want to know how to kind of open things back up. Is that fairly accurate?
Yes, sir, to an extent. He's very open when he needs something.
Gotcha.
Money, food, cigarettes, that kind of thing. But I'm really curious as to how to try to rebuild that, because we had a good relationship when he was younger. I'm a single mom.
Gotcha.
And I feel like I've lost that, and I want to try to get that communication, the lines of communication back open.
Gotcha. How often does he have these kind of needs where he lets you know about them? The cigarettes, the money, etc.
Probably, I don't know, once a month, once every 3 to 6 weeks, depending on the situation. Some are more, he had a wreck they wrecked his car, and so he's had to reach out to help on insurance and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But anything other than that, he doesn't really like to talk to me. And like I said, there's some stuff I don't want to know about. You're fine. I have a lot of anxiety, and so I don't need to know about
Gotcha.
the craziness.
How old is he?
He just turned 20.
And does he live near you, or?
He lives fairly close, about maybe, depending on traffic, 20 minutes away.
Okay,
Just
not
up the
far at
road,
all, really. Yeah.
in the Dallas area with me.
Okay, so without knowing a whole lot of the history, I would say to begin to open those avenues yourself, and tell him very just realistically, without being pushy. Say, listen, I don't want to pressure you or anything, but part of being a mom is caring about you and being concerned about you. So I like to hear how things are going. Just tell me a little something. It's just, imagine, you see it all the time. How was your day at school? Fine. What'd you learn? nothing, and that's not an unusual response, particularly from, adolescent males. And to be clear, we are now considering adolescents to run through the mid-20s, so he qualifies. So it's not unusual, but at the same time, it's kind of going to be on you to find a way to open that door, to be able to find what he does want to talk about. What are his interests? Start there. Talk about things that maybe you don't even care about, except that it matters to him. Start with what interests him. And when you because people always love to talk about their stuff. Most people love to talk about themselves if it's something, if it's a computer game he loves to play. You say, well, what is the game you're playing these days? How's that work? Can you show me? And he may hem and haw, but the truth is, sooner or later, you'll find the button that opens that door. And once you find a common ground where he's got something he wants to talk about, you may find that opens the door to additional things that you'd like to hear about.
Okay. Do you think it might change? I know that the male brain is not fully developed until their mid-20s.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any correlation in them, whether they're active addiction recovery addicts or neurotypical? Does that correlate at all as to the point where they realize their parents aren't the devil?
Yeah, there's a range of things that happen in the addicted brain, and sometimes they happened before the addiction. And I'm going to pull up something to share on the screen here so that you guys can see this. So here is see if I can make it happen. Share. Can you guys see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So as you go through, and this is one of those genetic tests that I was talking about, I've redacted information on the individual, but I want to scroll down here and show you in part, sorry for the rolling screen. I know that can make it. Here's things that are typically involved in the genetic markers. And so you will see some of that stuff over here in the impulsive area, as well as over here in the obsessive area, and then over here in the personalities. We normally think of just addictions when we think of reward deficiency syndrome and genetic tendencies, but there's a lot of things involved. And sometimes, and some of these words don't really mean what many people think they mean, but let me scroll down to some of these explanations to show you here some of the risk factors. So stress, pathological aggression would be a good example of something that's misinterpreted regularly. Panic disorders, oppositional defiant. There are, having a genetic predisposition doesn't mean you exhibit it. So if he has a little bit of something that going on where there's just simply an imbalance in his brain chemistry, it may be normal and natural for him to be closed up. He
Right.
may not have the
with ODD, and he is bipolar 1 mid.
Okay, so those are all factors, and you need to understand those are factors, and his not even understanding, how to share and feeling probably a certain amount of hesitation because of he feels that he doesn't understand his own thinking. He may not want to share because you'll think he's crazy or try and label him, and there's all these kind of things. A lot of these things, as you're looking at this list here, can be resolved by simply changing their nutritional inputs. And so he may be, I will tell you, I was so shy early in my life. Here I am talking for a living most of the time. When I went to my first high school reunion, there was a girl who had known me through junior high and high school, and I said something to her, and she just got this look of shock. And I'm like, what? And she says, I really thought you were mute. I never heard you talk for 6 years. I didn't think you spoke. So, we do grow out of it, thankfully, but also I was doing things at that time to improve my health, which includes my mental health. So you can see that there's certain things we can add, and I'll get down to one of these, and this is skipping past parts of the report. So let's say here that if I have novelty seeking, some gambling issues, conduct disorders, I can do things to balance my brain by adding the right nutrients. Once I know the full risk factors, what's involved, there's a formula for this individual. I'll pull to the very end. I don't know if I have it on this one. when I look at all his risk factors, there's actually a formula that resolves all of this through amino acids. You may find that your son does well with that. So you understand that his brain is evolving. He doesn't even understand the changes within him, but find that common ground. You may open a door there, and then find out if he's got the mental health issues you described, what he's doing to resolve that. Is it masking the issues, or is it actually resolving the issues? So I talk about it in the sense of feeding the brain versus tweaking the brain. Are we giving it what it needs to be balanced, or are we simply dealing with symptoms rather than causes? Don't get me wrong, there's some things to which there is no addressing the cause. You can only treat the symptoms. And so, you do the best you can with what you got. But I would say that he's probably, and again, there's also at 20, there's that separation where you're trying to be, a man, the old Alice Cooper song, not really a man and not really a child, and finding that ground. It's a very awkward age for men and, young adolescent males in particular, for everybody, but for adolescent males in particular. Find out what his comfort zone is and start there. Look at maybe some of these issues, see about getting them tested, see about feeding his brain the things it needs to be more balanced. And I think you'll see the personality between time and proper nutrition and healing, and then the right pathway of conversation. I think you'll start to see some changes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
No problem. Well, any other questions?
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what the words are. The issues you were just talking about with the brain and how you test.
Mm-hmm.
I live in the state of New York. My son is on Medicaid with an HMO. Already, do you know of any places in New York that has any of these advanced, these treatments and the things that you're telling me about? I was going to say, do you have any scholarships? No.
Yeah. Well, here's the answer to that real quickly is that this is very new, newly available. So really there's like us and one other place that are currently doing it. There's several more getting geared up to do it. It's recently FDA approved. So now the amino acids we've been doing for years, but the genetic testing to target them what they call neuronutrients specific to their genetics is new. The ability to do that is new. So no insurance covers it yet. But I will tell you that the manufacturer has gone out of their way to make it as reasonably affordable as possible for people. So the tests themselves are like $300, but then the neuronutrient, which helps resolve those issues, is you can get it online for $60 a month. So really, when you consider the dramatic difference it makes in people's lives, that's freakishly affordable. And so the real hurdle is that the first cost of the test. And so certainly that is the big chunk. But once you get past that, trust me, I have yet to find someone in recovery who didn't spend more than $60 a month or usually a day getting high. So, and don't get me wrong, I don't always want them doing the things they do to get their drug to get their health, but I do want them to consider the value of investing in themselves. And $60 a month and $2 a day, as it turns out, is pretty cheap. Skip your Starbucks. If you skip Starbucks twice a week, you're covered.
But do you think it will? Reach, countrywide, that eventually people will pick up on this? And
there's no doubt that this is going to. It'll probably catch on a little slowly because our world is full of people who want to do it the way they've always done it, even if that has always failed. So getting people to do something wonderful, even if it works. Look at the medication-assisted therapies that have been around for 40 years, and we're just now getting acceptance on, and that's being paid for by insurance and pushed by our government. imagine something that no pharmaceutical industry is shoving down your throat
Oh,
and
yeah,
lobbying
yeah,
DC for it. So yeah,
right.
um, it'll probably be slow, but I imagine, but given its effectiveness and the rate of success with it, I imagine that you'll
Mhm.
see an explosion of it starting to come up pretty soon here. Certainly,
Oh,
if there's anything I have to say about it, there will be. As far as the insurance companies getting in, I know that the developers have been talking to them. They're
mhm.
resistant to paying for anything they're not already paying for, even if it saves them money. So that's going to be a process as well. It took us how many years to get prescribed vitamin D to be covered? And then the truth
Yes.
is the copay is almost the price of vitamin D anyway. So what do you save? So I don't know how long it'll be before we see them buy into this. But again, the people who have developed it have made it reasonably affordable when you consider the cost savings. You know, when you
Right.
consider
Right.
the lives saved, when you consider the ER visits
Mhm.
avoided, when you consider the general ability to work a job and keep sober and make a living, the value to it is so great it far outweighs the $300 you have to invest to get started.
Yeah. That'd be, yeah, yeah. Thank you. That's good
Yeah.
to know. So
Thank you,
thanks very
Cindy.
much.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank
Yeah.
you, Lyle. And also for anyone who's here, Lyle does can help you with that testing, even if your child isn't down there. Just message him on
Mhm.
Facebook, and he can set you up with that test and how to do that for your child. Um,
Absolutely.
and
And
also,
I'm
think
working with
about the
them
three
now to
hundred
get
dollars.
some.
That's a great Christmas present, to
Great.
find out what your child's missing that he could be easily taking an amino acid to help with.
Yeah.
Can I ask one quick question to the two of you? But they have to be clean and sober, right? In order to
No.
test them.
No. Your DNA is your DNA is your DNA. You can test
Okay.
somebody the minute they're born up until the day they die, no matter what else they're putting in their body. It's not testing
Okay.
what's in your bloodstream. It's actually testing your DNA.
Okay. That's, I just, I was a little confused. Well, that's
Yeah.
good
No.
to know. Maybe that
Yeah.
will be a Christmas gift.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Cindy. All right. Do we have any more questions before we let Lyle go this evening? We hate to let him go, but it has been an hour. So, and he does like to go to bed early. So do I.
Yes, I do.
So, anyone else here with a question about any of the testing, or if you're interested in the testing, I am him. My son's been tested. We're waiting on the results. I'm ecstatic about it. So, Lyle, do you have 2 minutes that you can just tell them the percentages of relapse before, like you did last time? Just the percentages of the relapses.
Sure.
Thanks.
Traditional treatment for opioids has an 86% relapse rate. When you combine the genetic testing with targeted neuronutrients based on their genetics, that drops from 86% relapse to 6% relapse for opioids. For cocaine,
Wow.
it goes from 90% to 20%. For alcohol, it goes from 56% to 20.5%. So dramatic difference. It reduces the cravings. It reduces the impulsive and compulsive behaviors. It helps abate the depression, anxiety, and it helps add clarity to your thinking and better decision making. I mean, just all in all, phenomenal changes, and we've seen it at work in people's lives in just phenomenal ways. People who have told me that they are certain they're going to relapse and then tell me 2 weeks later how great they feel and how much better their thinking is, how much less irritable they are, all these wonderful things. And so the early trials, those are the stats that we got back before it was even released to the public in the trials that they did. And that's crazy numbers. Even if it was half that good, it's still better than any other process out there. So that's why I'm so excited about it. I wish I had stock in the company because I really believe that it will take off. It's kind of hard not to.
I'm excited too. It's amazing. It really is. It's just from 86% to 6%. That's
That's
huge.
amazing.
And is there anything about meth in there, Lyle? Is there any test yet on what it does for meth?
Not specifically to meth, but typically cocaine and meth, since they work on the same mechanisms as far as the dopamine issue, it should be hopefully similar. Relapse rates for meth and cocaine, particularly crack cocaine, are almost identical. Neuroplasticity, the healing process of those neurotransmitter systems, is about the same for the two of them. So I expect that the results will be similar as well.
And what about benzos, Adderall, those type things?
We don't have it for that yet. I have not seen that study come out yet. I'm looking for that, hoping that they do one soon.
Yeah,
You know.
benzos is huge now. It's just getting worse and worse and worse every
Oh
day.
yeah. Yeah, and cocaine's back on the rise again, and
Yeah.
alcohol's never really gone anywhere. You know.
So the opioids, the fentanyl would go in there with the opioids as well, right?
Yes. Yes. Opioids all work on the same mechanism.
It's just so exciting. It really is. And being on that bandwagon, is just, if you're trying to give your kid a fighting chance, that's a fighting chance.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So thank you so much for being here. We look forward to you in the next couple weeks. Another Ask Lyle. We love it when you're here. We have been with Lyle Freed, the CEO of the Shores Recovery Center in Port St. Lucie, Florida. And Lyle, thank you so much again for being with us, our guru.
Okay. Thanks for having me. Y'all have a great night.
Thank you, Lyle.
Thank you, everyone, for being here, too. This will be recorded and it will be on our TAM website under Ask Lyle, as well as on our TAM YouTube channel within a few days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right,
Yes.
everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you both that was great.
Thank you as well.
Sorry,
that was
my
great.
phone died just, but thank you all.